When I think about Wayne Gray, the thing that comes to my mind is the way he ties history and geography, a sense of place, pretty much to everything in his life.
It's hard to put Wayne into one little category because he did so much. I mean, how could he do all that? How could he be a principal or a college professor, cooking at a restaurant, writing books, writing poetry, being a father, being a husband, involved with his church?
He just had this knack about getting people excited about things, and he would generally get excited about something, research it, and get other people excited about it.
And he loved people. I mean, he's just an incredible guy.
When I think of Wayne, I don't really divide it between, a professor versus not professor. I just think of him as a friend. And I think that was a case for many other students that he had.
My pop was a great man. He believed that every kid should have enough money to go to college and get a great education and then an amazing job.
I spent my boyhood years frapping mosquitoes and seeing how high I could kick beer cans. I lived a lonely existence, loafing around the docks and listening to stories about women, whiskey, and the sea. Most of my nights found me in the front bedroom of my grandmother's 3-story house, looking out the dormers at the rain, rereading Ivanhoe or King Arthur.
Wayne was born in Portsmouth, Virginia, because his father was in the Navy, but he comes from a long line of Outer Bankers.
So my dad was very proud of his Outer Banks heritage, and he was 8th generation Outer Banker. Traced the family tree back to his relative who was on a ship that wrecked from Wales and kind of washed ashore in Hatteras.
His parents had 5 children. They weren't the best of parents, and so the children all were raised by different family members. And Wayne got the best of it. He was raised by his grandparents, Mr. Richard Gray and Daisy. And they had the old wharf down here on the west side of Wanchese. And so Wayne spent his days with his grandfather, sweeping the freight house and helping the fishermen when they brought in their catches. He went to school here in Wanchese and then later in Manio. And his grandparents were afraid he was going to get in trouble here in Wanchese. So his grandparents would send him over to the beach for the summer to live with his aunt and uncle, Beauty and Jethro Midget, who had Midget Seafood. And they would get up early in the morning and fish nets. His family were beach haul net seiners, so they would set a net in the ocean in the evening, get up the next morning and pull it with a truck, and pick fish out of the nets, take the fish up to the fish house, wash it, clean it, and then the boys would have to work in the fish house all day. But he always was a hard worker. That really gave him a drive to want to go to college, to get a degree. He was started at Atlantic Christian and didn't have much money for any frills. I think he told me his grandmother gave him $20 a month. And so he would hitchhike back and forth to college. And then after a year, he did transfer to NC State, where he majored in English, and he studied under some really famous teachers at the time and got a real good education in English and a real passion for literature. And when he graduated from college, he came home and he taught at Manio High, which he was teaching kids that were just a few years younger than he. And he always said he appreciated the fact that they didn't give him too hard of a time. He took a job in Greensboro, taught out there for a while.
So there, my best friend and I are sitting in this classroom waiting for our English teacher to come in. And in walks this really dapper man. And we didn't have many men teachers. And he had a full beard. And we were just all sort of looking at him. what's he going to be like this year? And then he opened his mouth. And he had this, I didn't know what it was called then, I do now, this Outer Banks brogue. And I was just mesmerized. He was a real anomaly in that he had the old Outer Banks brogue, and they were all city kids that whose parents were working in textile mills, so they were two different cultures, but he managed to reach them, and they in turn influenced his life, and he won the Teacher of the Year award out there. I was already a good English student, but I became the best English student.
The work songs pull it all together, keeping the men's spirit as light as the nets are heavy. The songs a mixture of gospel and ballads about love and sorrow, God and humor, an inner strength to the men who enrich the verses with the hardness of their lives.
He always said he would never live on this clump of mud, but after he taught in Greensboro for a while, lived in Raleigh for a while, he came on back to Dare County. He got a job as assistant principal at Manteo High School, and he also taught some creative writing. He was transferred to Manteo Elementary and was an assistant principal there, and put in, I know, over 10 years on that job. The restaurant that Wayne and my father began was Queen Anne's Revenge in Wanchese, which was on the end of Old Wharf Road. They didn't know what to name it, and Wayne was pushing for the Poet and the Pauper, but that would have made my dad the pauper, so they finally went for Queen Anne's Revenge because that was the name of Blackbeard's pirate ship, and they wanted to capture some local history. They opened one night. We did 53 people the first night in 1978. And I remember that we were just wiped out. We thought that was an incredible amount of people to serve. And he cooked, and my dad was out front acting as host.
When Wayne and Nancy had Queen Anne's Revenge, it was literally one of a dozen at the most.
Queen Anne's Revenge and Wanchese was sort of like the, best kept secret that everybody knew, because it was tucked away. It was very unassuming in the exterior, but as soon as you walked in the door, you could feel the warmth of the place, being a family-owned restaurant. And, just great seafood because he grew up here.
Wayne and Nancy had an elegant menu. They had a place where local people would see each other. I mean, it was just a classy place.
The original plan was that they were going to switch roles, but that never happened. Wayne spent his whole 28 and a half years in the kitchen in front of the stove. And in retrospect, he said he should have been more of a manager, but in his quest to control food quality, he was always the head chef, always in the line.
As a chef, he was using his grandmother's recipes. He was using all of the knowledge that he had going out and clamming himself, growing up here and gathering seafood and cooking for the family.
We were very successful, and all of our children were raised in the restaurant, literally riding their bicycles in the kitchen during the day and then working at age 12 as dishwashers and waiting on tables.
But he also made it fun. He made it fun for us. It was work, but it was fun work. And one of his famous lines was, "Hot food in the kitchen, gotta go." We knew we had to get back there and get it, or we were all gonna be in trouble.
At the restaurant, it was more than a restaurant. He was mentoring all of the young people who were waiting tables and washing dishes and cooking. He was always saying, what's your next step? And whether somebody wanted to be a nurse or go to a four-year college or become, a police officer, or whatever they wanted to do, he was really good about encouraging them, focusing them.
So it gave our family a good stability and built a lot of character in our children, we felt like.
I owned a bookstore called Manteo Booksellers, and Wayne was involved with the bookstore originally because he loved literature. And that's how I got to meet Wayne. It was both at the bookstore because he was in buying books, publishing books that I would sell of his. He did signings, recommending his students would come to the bookstore to buy books for their classes.
Some of my fondest memories, really, of life are sitting in the wing chairs at Manio Booksellers with Steve at the registers. And Wayne would come in, he always wore white pants and a white shirt. You know, that was sort of Wayne's uniform. And, you know, we were going to have a conversation about literature and writing for at least an hour, the three of us.
Your eyes have changed since that day so long ago. Your loose laugh is gone, leaving nothing but a choked voice. And the agony of all those years shows in your eyes. The magic gleam gone, the fury lost in a cold cell.
I guess around 2005, Wayne started to get sick, and he actually passed out in the bookstore one day and started us on a medical journey in which we found out that Wayne had liver cancer. And miracle upon miracles, he got on the transplant list at Chapel Hill, and he received a liver at UNC Chapel Hill, and he was the poster boy for transplantation. From the moment he got that transplant, he had good health, and he had this feeling of, I've got a second chance. And he just ran for the next 13 years, and I was panting to keep up with him.
He started teaching at College of the Albemarle, started writing his histories, started having this lasting influence on so many students that he helped go on to higher education or, you know, just really define themselves.
When the College of the Albemarle hired my dad, they gained a professor that had the knowledge and the heart to teach, not only by the book, but on a personal level as well. He took each student there and not only guided them academically, but also personally, and guided them a lot of ways that most teachers don't. He did it because that was his passion.
He was teaching an English class, and a lot of people, especially international students, because English was not the first language for them, they would reach out to him and ask, hey, like, I'm struggling with writing. And he would always help them. He would give them books or just edit their writing and just highlight, you know, what it is wrong with it.
When I think about him as a teacher, he had kids writing about the history of this place as a way to improve their written word or to teach them literature. You know, he was always going back to this as a place, and this place shaped by its history, which is shaped and turned by its geography.
We also started Literary Club, which led to the magazine being created called Sandbar. The students would write their research papers on local history because he was really excited about this, and that would get published in the Sandbar.
And at that time, they were not always producing it. It was kind of here and there. And he was like, oh no, we're going to do this. And he got students motivated. So he kind of came up with, let's revive this, and then had the students run with it. And so I think those were great experiences for people to put their own writing in their college, you know, booklet.
He taught Great Expectations, and just thought that was the best story because Pip was like he was, I guess. He wanted to have a better life. And then that really resonated with all the international students. Obviously, they had come to America to seek their fortunes.
That was part of the final presentation where people would do Great Expectation scene acting. So that was great because people got to dress up and play the roles from that. That was his creative part in the class.
He spent so much time grading papers. I guess he made about $4 an hour if you got down to it. But he wasn't in it for the money. He was trying to help them get a command of the English language, get writing better, build their resumes, help them to apply to other schools, helped them figure out ways to keep going to school.
For me personally, he helped me apply to four-year schools. And I know he was very proud of it. I'm gonna get emotional, sorry. And that was exciting because that's a lot of essay writing, a lot of just kind of self-analysis. What did I do before applying to school? So I ended up going to Yale because of him.
And he got students into Yale and Smith and Mount Holyoke, and that's not even talking about all the kids who went to UNC and East Carolina. The stuff he did was just incredible, way above the $20 an hour, whatever they paid us for part-time instructors. He turned it into a full-time job.
It became a game to him to see how many he could get into different universities free of charge, you know, and he did.
He gravitated towards the international students because they were driven and they needed help. They're like, how can we continue our schooling? We've gotten our associate's degree. We don't have any money to go onto a four-year college. And he was like, let's find out.
If you ask him for something and you give him that goal, I want to write better. I want to start a club. I want to get into school. That's it. That's his goal. The great part about him being here was that he was not here just to teach, he was here to change somebody's lives. Be it somebody like me who wanted to get involved in the community, start the clubs, or somebody who was struggling with their English, or somebody who was trying to maybe become a writer. Whatever people needed the help with, he was always here for them. And not just here in the sense of being a teacher, which is broad already, but also in the sense of being a mentor.
He always had a passion for poetry and wrote and self-published poetry books from his early adulthood on.
Most people think of poetry as kind of either untouchable, enigmatic, it's hard to understand. But Wayne's poetry, they were like stories, but they were written in a different kind of a poetic style.
When I first met him, it was all about love and lost love and heartbreak. And then he did a lot of nature poetry. Then he tried a lot of poetry that captured sort of the raw part of life, the hard living part of life. But as many people know, poetry is not a big seller. And he, of course, never made any money at it because there was no market for it. He diversified himself and he got into writing about local history.
I think he captured a lot of the stories of the Outer Banks, the photos of the Outer Banks, pictures that people had that they wouldn't give to anybody else.
We started working together, doing researching, gathering photos, and interviewing people, and it became a real fun hobby for us. And so he published 6 books on local history.
He could foresee the need of writing these stories down to have for future generations. And he was almost frantic about it because he just felt that time crunch of we've got to get the Outer Banks history written and on paper or it's going to be gone.
He actually was the poet laureate for Dare County at one point. Bobby Owens appointed him that.
Poet laureate is basically somebody who, in this case, captured a little bit of Dare County in literary form, whether it's through poetry or his history books or teaching. And he was the perfect person to be that because he did all those.
He always said he was an overachiever and that he came from, relatively humble beginnings, but he had achieved a lot. And I think that he inspired other people to be overachievers. It's always sad when somebody doesn't fulfill their potential, but it's always inspiring when somebody goes beyond what you thought their potential was.
He impacted many people's lives in many ways, and especially in 10 years that I knew him, he impacted mine in many ways.
When I was watching It's a Wonderful Life this Christmas, and the angel's talking to George Bailey about how different people's lives are, based because of what he did. And Sorry, I just kept thinking of Wayne.
The kids and I had a big fundraiser this summer, and we made an endowment to give a scholarship out in his name every year to a COA graduate who wants to go on with their education. And I know that would be so pleasing to him.
With the scholarship provided, thankfully with the community that's helped with that, it'll continue to repetitively say his name and to understand why it's important and why it's there. And it'll continue to grow and be advantageous for years to come with a lot of different people to enjoy it.
I hope you enjoyed this presentation on Wayne Gray. It was a privilege to have him as a professor here at the College of the Albemarle Dare. His dedication to his English students and the international students was unmatched. His legacy here will be honored through continued study of his works in both history and English courses here. These works, along with additional poetry and historical books written by Wayne Gray, may be accessed and read here at the COA Dare Library in the Outer Banks collection.